Better Call Saul continues to bring the tension with Bad Choice Road. Season 5 episode 9 continues from where we left off in Bagman, giving us a introspective episode to set up the finale of this season. In particular, we focus on the effects left on Kim and Jimmy, Gus's plan and Mike's attempts to free Nacho from doing their bidding. It's all building up to next week's finale, and there is definitely something unforgivable which is about to take place. I'm going to be giving you my overall recap, review and breakdown of the events in this episode, as I have done for all of Season 5. There will be spoilers discussed in this recap, so if you have not seen Episode 9, I'd recommend catching up before watching this video. If you want to see more Better Call Saul recaps and reviews, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoy this video, remember to give it a like rating. Without further ado, here is my recap and review for Better Call Saul Season 5 Episode 9, entitled Bad Choice Road. We begin this episode with a sequel to the great montage from last season's Something Stupid. A cover of the Sinatra song plays as we see Jimmy and Kim in split screen. In last season's episode, the split was used to illustrate the growing emotional distance between them. Here it's emphasising the physical distance, as Jimmy and Mike finish the long walk they began last week, while Kim breaks down in the apartment. At times their moments are in sync, but in others they're not, like when Kim enjoys a cold glass of water while Jimmy has to swallow more of his own urine. Unlike last season, the image is never whole because our characters are in separate locations. But by the end of this fantastic episode, the two halves of Better Call Saul itself finally merge into one thrilling and terrifying narrative. While Jimmy and Kim have both previously met with Lalo in jail, now the distinction between the cartel and the civilian aspects of the show have come together, as Lalo enters their home armed with a gun and an unpredictable smile. I will return to this final scene at the end of the recap. Where Bagman was focused almost entirely on Jimmy and Mike's painful desert journey, Bad Choice Road is a traditionally structured episode until the long climactic sequence in and around the apartment. We catch up with most of the cast along with the various subplots. Gus figures out that the bandits were hired by Balsa, who seems very displeased by the thought of Lalo getting out of jail and returning to Mexico to interfere with his business. During this, Mike also tries to negotiate Nacho's release from Gus's control, but he is unyielding in his belief that Nacho is too treacherous to be managed through anything but fear. Lalo also says goodbye to Hector, trying to assure the frail man that he'll be back once the tension dies down. But the final gaze towards his uncle suggests that he knows this is the last time they'll see each other. Kim quits the firm and Jimmy even appears in court on behalf of a client, though the only thing we see is the awkward aftermath as Bill taunts him from snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. Jimmy's off his game because he's understandably traumatised by what he did and saw in the desert. He's moving slower due to the severe sunburn, but he also seems to be thinking slower. Familiar sounds like Kim running the juicer now remind him of gunshots and explosions. He's lying to Kim about what really happened, unaware that she's already seen the bullet hole in the travel mug that she gave him. He is concerned to realise that the only person he can talk to about this experience is Mike. When he sits in Mike's car, he seems totally shaken by the thought of those dead men, even after Mike argues that it was a them or us situation. Memories of Fred's murder also trouble him, and even Mike hints that Lalo will soon be taken care of. Mike assures Jimmy that he will move past this trauma in time. And with Lalo heading towards his death, it seems to Jimmy for a moment that he has a chance to return to normality. But some combination of fate, Kim and Lalo have other plans for him. Like Mike says, once you go down that road, you're on the road, no matter how hard you try to turn off. It's a bad choice road which is unfortunately permanent. Moving on to Lalo, he again proves that he's much smarter than anyone expects, realising that he and Nacho didn't pass Jimmy's broken down car on the drive down to meet the cousins. He orders Nacho to take him north in search of the car, and once he observes the tracks that Mike and Jimmy left, Lalo finds it. He jumps down onto the overturned car and sees the bullet holes scattered all over it. Now he knows that someone is after him, and this will only make tensions more rabid as we move into the final episode. This all leads to the paths being crossed, and now we can only begin to witness the tension turn physical. And we think that we will maybe see that in this episode, but the writers defy our expectations once again. When Jimmy finds out that Kim has quit her job, he assumes she's overreacting to his near-death experience. His desert adventure did influence her decision, but not in the way that he thinks. While she's alarmed by the possibility of him dying out there, it feels more like she could have taken a day and a half off from work for a more mundane reason and still felt the same lack of connection and interest upon returning. She doesn't want to be this person anymore and hasn't for most of this season. That said, Jimmy's peril and the lies he tells puts her on an emotional journey that perhaps readies her for Lalo's arrival at the apartment door. She knows Jimmy is lying to her about what actually happened and even confronts him about it. But news that Lalo met his wife rightly terrifies Jimmy and makes him keep lying, even when she assures him she won't judge him for it. At another point in their relationship, this would drive a wedge between them, but the fight that led to her marriage proposal fundamentally changed or maybe just broke something in Kim too. Now she just wants Jimmy and will keep making these decisions to allow the relationship to continue. Even knowing that someone shot at him and that he didn't tell her about it seems like something she quickly learns to deal with. When they finally fight in their apartment, it's not over what happened in the desert, but about Jimmy's response to her leaving the firm. This argument doesn't conclude though, because suddenly Mike is making a worrying call to Jimmy as Lalo stands in their doorway. They have no choice but to let him in, and as he walks around in the apartment, Kim also passes over into the world that's home to Mike, Gus, the cousins, and eventually Heisenberg. She's now a part of the bad choice road that Jimmy and Mike were discussing. This apartment sequence, which runs at about 16 minutes, is one of the most tension-filled moments in the entirety of the show. On the one hand, it feels endless because Lalo, as usual, is a dog with a bone and keeps making Jimmy tell his story over and over again, teasing out new details each time even as he doesn't believe him. The longer it goes, the tenser everything feels, and so does the sheer wrongness of Kim being present. But on the other hand, the sequence somehow seems to fly by because it's so exciting and sharp. We begin to cut between the apartment itself and through Mike's sniper scope on the roof the opposite side. Before Mike has to decide whether to take the shot, Kim literally steps in his path and saves the day, scolding Lalo as if he were just another annoying client like Kevin from Mesa Verde. She raises reasonable doubt about the bullet holes by linking them to local vandals, then points out how shaky Lalo's operation must be if he has to trust a man like Saul Goodman. She makes the villain seem small. Kim says if you don't trust your men with your money, you have bigger problems than if you trust Saul. She advises him to get his house in order. Whether or not Lalo believes Jimmy, Kim successfully refocuses his anger towards a target south of the border. He leaves, allowing her, Jimmy and Mike to breathe, even if it's only for the rest of the day. Overall, it's a knockout performance and one suggesting Kim could do just fine working on Jimmy's side of the street if she wanted to. Earlier, Jimmy was angry at her for visiting Lalo, saying that he's in the game and she's not. As the audience, we don't want her in the game because we know how the game ends for everybody in this world. But although we are protective of Kim, this brilliant scene has me hoping that she plays a while longer. I'm giving Better Call Saul Season 5 Episode 9 a rating of 4.5 stars. It's become routine that the penultimate episode of a season serves as the climax in the era of peak TV. We've become conditioned to expect fireworks in a penultimate episode, something that sets the stage for a momentous season finale. However, the 9th episode, Bad Choice Road, is perhaps one of the most reflective in the series. We cannot just breeze past what happened to Jimmy out in the desert. Being stranded in the desert is a traumatic experience itself, but this also was Jimmy's first brush with brutal cartel violence. This isn't something a person can just easily move past, and carrying on like everything is normal despite his best attempts. Even with Kim being nurturing and dismissing their full disclosure policy, Jimmy tries to will himself back to business as usual, but he's off his game. It's hard to believe that there's only one more episode left of Better Call Saul this season. At one point Jimmy declared himself a god, now Kim's fighting his battles and he's standing scared on the sidelines. It feels like there's so much left to resolve between Jimmy and Kim, Gus and the Salamancas, Nacho and Gus, and Lalo with everyone else. I'm curious to see how next week's episode attempts to tie up season 5. So let me know down below what you thought of episode 9 and tell me what else you picked out or any predictions you have for episode 10. If you enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe and turn on your notifications to stay up to date with all my other Better Call Saul reviews, along with content on other great shows like Westworld and movie related topics. Also, don't forget to give the video a like rating. I hope you guys enjoyed the recap and review. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.